Lamar Jackson's still on the board.
Brady Quinn is still on the board.
Johnny Manziel is still sitting there.
Why is he dropping like this, and which teams might take him?
He's just starting to run out of options.
He might slip out of this first round.
Had to wait 5 hours.
Yeah, it was a long day.
What better way to start this list than with one of the best redemption stories in football? From a draft day slide and a subpar start to his career, Geno Smith was dealt a bad hand. But after his 2022 Comeback Player of the Year campaign, he turned out to be anything but a waste of a pick. As a top QB prospect in 2013, Smith was slated to be the first signal caller off the board in many mock drafts. Instead, the West Virginia product was faced with a nightmare draft slide.
If he gets past the Raiders at 12, he might slip out of this first round.
He's just starting to run out of options.
With the QB-needy Bills picking at 16, draft experts believed this was the last chance for Smith to be selected in the first round.
You haven't heard Geno's name with Buffalo in a very long time.
Yeah, in fact, I'm told, Rich, the organization is really not big fans of Geno Smith. I'd be shocked if that happened.
The Buffalo Bills select E.J. Manuel, quarterback, Florida State.
The first quarterback taken is not Geno Smith.
And as day one came and went in unprecedented fashion, Smith remained in the green room until round two.
Geno Smith had a very long first night. The West Virginia quarterback is back for night number 2.
The Jets are getting ready to pick Ian. There's been a lot of buzz about a possible quarterback. Is it Nassib? Is it possibly Geno Smith?
New York Jets select Geno Smith.
To be brutally honest, I think he fell about where he should have gone based on what his tape tells me. There are 4 or 5 games they're not even worthy of a 5th round grade.
It's a dream come true for me to finally live out my dream, and the work's just beginning for me.
10 NFL seasons later, and Smith's career is summed up perfectly by this viral quote.
They wrote me off. I ain't right back, though.
The heated debate heading into the 2006 draft was about which quarterback was the better prospect. Between Vince Young, Jay Cutler, and Matt Leinart, all three had their respective upsides, but only one had a Heisman Trophy. Considered to have been the first overall pick had he left USC after his 2004 season, Leinart made the questionable decision to stay an extra year.
People will question, Corey, whether he should have come out last year and been the first draft pick in the entire draft.
But after the Tennessee Titans decided to make Vince Young their quarterback of the future with the 3rd overall pick, the QB debate began to intensify with just 2 prospects left.
Jay Cutler, it gets there more quickly. He's got the bigger arm.
You notice one thing about Matt Leinart, a lot of times he has to have perfect anticipation in terms of leading the receiver because his arm strength, as Mike alluded to, maybe is not considered elite.
With draft experts calling his arm strength into question, Leinart faced the issue of becoming the last man standing in the green room.
He is still in the green room waiting to hear his name called as he's going to drop further down this NFL draft.
QB-needy teams were initially hesitant to trade up for either player, but luckily for Leinart, a team out west ended his slide.
The Arizona Cardinals select Matt Leinart, quarterback, USC.
You never want to be that last guy in the room.
It's been difficult. I try to keep your head up, and you realize that there's really nothing you can do. It's out of my hands. I did everything I could, and I think it's a blessing. It's going to be awesome. Plus, the West Coast, it's fun.
Despite not having the same kind of success in the NFL as he did in college, Leinart's drop still provided enough draft day drama to warrant him a spot on our top 10 list. From 2011 to 2017, nobody caught more touchdowns than Dez Bryant. Over his NFL career, Bryant blossomed into one of the best receivers of his time, but before he became a pro, the former college All-American experienced a hefty draft day slide. Issues with Bryant's character surfaced during the pre-draft process, but despite the narrative surrounding him, the All-American wideout was still expected to be the first receiver taken.
Denver, which started at 11 and then moved down to 13 and then moved down to 24, it's just popped up to 22 to take who?
I don't think it's Dez.
Yes.
It could be Dez or Demaryius Thomas.
The Denver Broncos select Demaryius Thomas, wide receiver, Georgia Tech.
With Denver passing on Bryant in favor of Demaryius Thomas, it was clear who'd be the next receiver taken if one were to come off the board soon.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say the next 2 picks in this draft are Des Bryant to the New England Patriots, paired with Randy Moss. Are you kidding me? Trade? What are we hearing?
The Dallas Cowboys have just left up.
The Dallas Cowboys select Des Bryant.
Jerry, I don't think he's ever gotten over some of the things that Randy Moss did to the Dallas Cowboys when he came in that stadium. Jerry doesn't want to make that same mistake and let this guy, this kind of talent, get away.
He's going to have to grind him off the field now. You got to work hard with him off the field. If you do that, you've got a Pro Bowl wide receiver.
Bryant proved the doubters wrong by becoming the next great Cowboy wide receiver to wear the famed number 88.
The New England Patriots select running back Curtis Martin.
Boy, if he's healthy, he's real good.
Some honorable mentions. Curtis Martin's Hall of Fame career ultimately renders any pre-draft concerns surrounding him irrelevant. The Pitt Panther was an intriguing prospect coming out of college, but durability issues caused Martin to free fall. Scouts said he could have been a first-round pick if he had stayed an extra year, but New England took him with the 74th, and the rest is history. Oklahoma State's Thurman Thomas should have been a top draft pick coming out in 1988, but his draft stock plummeted after suffering a knee injury in college. Buffalo was willing to take a chance on him with their second-round selection, and boy, did it end up paying off. In a year in which Heisman Trophy winners bookended the first round of the draft, who could have expected a future MVP of the league to drop to the 32nd pick overall? With 4 quarterbacks taken in the first 10 picks in 2018, Lamar Jackson was hoping to become the 5th QB selected in the first round, but as teams started passing on him, the hope began to dwindle.
We have a trade. Saints moving up to 14. Tell us about it. 2 possible targets. I'll give you one. Louisville quarterback Lamar Jackson, who was in the Saints building and they love.
I really believe that it's going to be quarterback Lamar Jackson.
The New Orleans Saints select Marcus Davenport.
Oh, wow.
Defensive end.
But New Orleans passing on Jackson was only the tip of the iceberg.
Lamar Jackson's still on the board.
Where could Lamar Jackson potentially land in this draft? The Bengals, the Ravens, the Saints, we thought were doing it. They didn't do it. And the Patriots.
I just don't see Bill Belichick going with a quarterback right here in Lamar Jackson.
When they were having these conversations, Baltimore was, what would our offense look like with Lamar Jackson?
With insiders linking 2 potential teams to Jackson, the question remained, why are teams passing on him?
I think a couple things hurt him, to be honest with you. He didn't time in the 40 at the combine. He didn't time in the 40 on his pro day. And I felt that when you're going into your pro day, you play to your strengths. And his strengths is his ability to run.
There's times where he stares things down. He doesn't see underneath coverage. He struggles in the pocket when that first look isn't there.
With the picks flying by, time was running out in the first round. That is, until Baltimore traded back into the first round to grab the final pick on day 1.
Makes sense.
I would jump up and down if this is who it is.
The Baltimore Ravens select Lamar Jackson.
There it is.
Wow. Quarterback, Louisville.
It's a risk. It's a gamble. No question.
We talk about an electrifying upside, a little bit raw in the pass game.
What could you have done differently that you could have gotten out of that room quicker?
Nothing. I'm happy to be a Raven. It don't even matter.
5 years into Lamar Jackson's career and 1 MVP later, it's safe to say that the teams who didn't see it in 2018 are kicking themselves today. In 2007, quarterback Brady Quinn became synonymous with draft slides. A slight debate surrounded Quinn and fellow top prospect Jamarcus Russell over who was the best QB in the draft. The Raiders, who picked first, had their hands full.
I know we keep talking Russell, but does Russell give them the best opportunity to win right now?
Russell and LSU's Sugar Bowl beatdown of Quinn and the Fighting Irish might have swayed the minds of NFL teams over who was the better prospect.
When he thinks he's got to really drive the football to his outside, he loses power and accuracy.
With that narrative unfolding, Oakland decided to choose the guy with the cannon for an arm.
With the first pick, the Oakland Raiders select Jamarcus Russell, LSU.
With Russell off the board, the attention of NFL teams should have all turned to Quinn, right? Well, not so fast.
The Cleveland Browns select Left tackle, Joe Thomas, Wisconsin.
The Browns passed on Quinn, and unfortunately for Notre Dame's Golden Boy, the fall didn't stop there.
Brady Quinn is still on the board. I think that's somewhat surprising to both Minnesota and Miami.
Judging by the look of Brady Quinn, I think it's surprising to Brady Quinn that he's not
you know what, though?
taken yet also.
Miami sat at pick number 9, with many thinking the QB-needy Dolphins would take Quinn, ending his draft day nightmare.
You don't have a secure quarterback situation. I think it's got to be Brady Quinn right here.
The Miami Dolphins select Ted Ginn, wide receiver, Ohio State.
Wow! You can read Brady Quinn's lips. That was surprising.
Quinn was baffled, but to draft experts, the reason was more apparent than most thought.
He does have occasional accuracy issues. He's not a natural thrower of the football.
Maybe he's dropping because this guy is, in some people's mind, a product of the system, and maybe people feel he's been almost maxed out, or what you see is what you get.
But as the end of the day drew near, a trade began to develop.
The Cleveland Browns have been calling around the league, trying to move up into the first round to try to snag Brady Quinn.
The Cleveland Browns select Brady Quinn, quarterback, Notre Dame.
After waiting over 4 hours and 10 minutes in the green room, Brady Quinn is about to come out on the stage. Look at that face of a relieved young man.
How did you feel back there in that green room?
I never anticipated things going the way they did. I figured 9 would probably be the stopping point. And once the Dolphins, picked Ted Ginn, I really wasn't sure what to expect. I'm happy to be the place that I wanted to be in. People talk about losing money. I never had that money.
There you
So
go.
how can you lose it if you never had it?
Although scouts and experts were proven right in their assessment of Quinn that his accuracy was suspect and couldn't rise to the occasion in big games, at least he got a chance to don the jersey of his home state team. From one Browns QB to the next, you can't talk about draft day slides without mentioning Johnny Football. As the most electrifying player in the 2014 draft class, there were plenty of potential landing spots for Manziel, including number 1 overall to the Houston Texans.
The Houston Texans are now on the clock.
Could it possibly be Johnny Manziel?
The realistic chances of Manziel going number 1 weren't as good as Jadeveon Clowney's. That being said, the QB-needy Jaguars were on the clock 2 picks later, looking to take their guy of the future.
The Jacksonville Jaguars select Blake Bortles.
Well, there you have it. The first quarterback in this draft selected is not Johnny Manziel.
As Manziel began to drop after 2 potential landing spots, the hype surrounding him started to build.
That would put the Vikings, a quarterback-needy team, on the clock there at 8.
There's been a lot of Tampa Bay Manziel mania also.
The Browns now sit 8th overall. Is this Johnny Manziel? Is this Johnny Football? Browns fans are on the edge of their seats. Will they be getting Johnny Football?
I can't wait for this pick.
The Cleveland Browns select Justin Gilbert, defensive back, Oklahoma State.
Still sitting in the green room, the attention on the draft turned to the one guy left that mattered most.
Johnny Manziel, 10th overall on your draft board, is still sitting there. I'm just going to say it right now. We're in Johnny Football Watch right now. I'm not going to lie.
It seemed impossible that arguably the most accomplished player in the draft, one with a Heisman in his trophy case, could keep falling as he did. While Manziel did have some character concerns, it was his playing style that caused his draft day slide.
I want him to climb the pocket here. It's a clean pocket. Instead, what feels most comfortable to him is open space. That's the problem.
We know he's got a ways to go to become a pocket passer.
As the first round went on, Dallas's selection at 16 loomed large. Cowboys owner Jerry Jones was smitten with Manziel, and the idea of keeping Johnny Football in Texas seemed too good to pass up.
If they take Johnny Manziel right now, this place is going to explode.
The Dallas Cowboys select Zach Martin.
Another pick, another pass. But with Cleveland using their second first-round pick to trade up to number 22, it seemed as if Johnny would hear his name called soon.
And here's that chant. And you can hear the chant in the Radio City Music Hall for Johnny.
The Cleveland Browns select Johnny Manziel, quarterback, Texas A&M.
How hard was the wait?
It was tough, but I went into this saying I thought whatever team drafted me, whatever team fell in love with me, it would be the right situation for me.
While Johnny Football's NFL career was anything but fruitful, his draft day slide provided one of the most exciting moments in draft history.
Philadelphia has selected from the University of California wide receiver Deshaun Jackson.
More honorable mentions. Thought to be too small and weak for a first-round selection, Deshaun Jackson turned into one of the most electrifying players to ever play the game. Philly took the flashy playmaker in the second round, and Jackson has put those concerns to rest throughout his career.
The St. Louis Rams select Steven Jackson, running back from Oregon State.
A proven commodity at Oregon State, running back Steven Jackson slipped to 24th overall, where the Rams grabbed what became one of the best backs of the decade. Jackson missed the combine after sustaining a knee injury during his final year in college, which caused his draft day slide to the late first round. Luckily for St. Louis, it allowed them to grab a franchise player for years to come. Warren Sapp's 1995 slide was the definition of draft day drama. The Miami defensive lineman went into the first round as a consensus top pick, but his fate was unjustly altered the night before the draft.
Their background check by NFL security has produced 7 positive drug tests by Sapp.
We were still confident going into draft day, but we had no idea that he would fall out of the top 10.
Warren Sapp has never had any multiple tests of that nature. That's a complete untruth.
How could I go to the University of Miami, flunk 7 drug tests, and nobody know it until 11:30 at night, the night before the draft? Please tell me that.
Yet, despite the stout defense from Sapp's camp, teams were still wary.
What happened was, once a couple teams begin to back away from a player who should have been drafted higher, then everybody begins to back away.
But as Sapp continued to fall, a certain team's faithful set their sights on the Miami defensive tackle.
Sapp is the man.
Bring Sapp to
Sapp
New York.
is the
We'll
player.
take care of him.
With the 9th pick in the first round, the New York Jets select tight end from Penn State, Kyle Brady.
After another potential landing spot came and went, Sapp began to lose hope.
It was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. And if Brady Quinn ain't sitting there or Aaron Rodgers ain't sitting there until the 24th pick, guess who's the poster child for still dropping in the draft?
2 picks later, another team was ready to put Sapp back on the roller coaster ride again.
The Minnesota Vikings have Dennis Green as their coach, Tony Dungy as their defensive coordinator. You couldn't ask for a better player for what they want to do out of 3 technique than Warren Sapp.
With the 11th pick in the first round, the Minnesota Vikings select defensive end from Florida State, Derek Alexander.
Ooh, Derek Alexander is a fine player, but certainly was not as high up as Warren Sapp.
All hope seemed lost after the Vikings passed on Sapp until the Buccaneers came calling just 1 pick later.
What are you hearing on the phones right now?
Wow, my phone's ringing right now, so let's see.
Let's do it.
Hello, Rosenhaus.
Lo and behold, 12 picks later, I'm landing in Tampa with 12 consecutive double-digit loss seasons. Only silver lining in a real dirty, dark day in my life was that I would be playing 80 miles from my mother's home. There wasn't no game she'd miss. I knew that.
When it's all said and done, about 4 or 5 years from now, I'll put my money on Warren Sapp being the best player in the NFL.
That statement couldn't have been more accurate as Sapp led Tampa to a Super Bowl title in 2002 on his way to a Hall of Fame career. Randy Moss's draft day slide in 1998 will haunt NFL teams forever. The generational talent with unparalleled athleticism had all the makings of a future superstar heading into the draft. There was just one issue.
Do you take a risk and just go with him because he's a great football player, or is there a red flag?
If you're going to invest the first-round pick in a player, there better not be any question marks in regard to his past performances off the field.
You have to err on the side of caution because it can be very destructive to your salary cap.
Moss's slide began to ramp up as the Dolphins couldn't acquire the 7th pick from the Saints in hope of drafting him. 1 pick later, the Cowboys passed on him as well.
The Dallas Cowboys select defensive end from North Carolina, Greg Ellis.
Despite the challenging time for Moss, there was still hope for his first-round draft status.
Vikings hoping to learn from history. In '95, they wanted Warren Sapp. Tony Dungy was pounding on the table. They passed on him, regretted that later.
The Minnesota Vikings have selected wide receiver from Marshall University, Randy Moss.
If you see a big grin in Minnesota, it's Brian Billick's the offensive coordinator. He's got to be grinning ear to ear.
In what might be the luckiest moment in Vikings history, one of the best receivers ever fell into their lap and took the league by storm the following season as only Randy Moss could. The 1983 draft boasted what most consider the greatest quarterback class ever. While John Elway went number 1 overall to the Colts and Jim Kelly went 14th to the Bills, one more future franchise quarterback was still left on the board. A record 6 QBs were selected, with Marino being the last to go.
People were questioning whether, I was going to be, good enough to be, a good player in the league and all that stuff.
So what happened?
There were rumors about him in Pittsburgh, that he was a party guy, and, that's why he dropped.
Quarterbacks continued to fly off the board at an unprecedented pace. The Marino slide continued with Jim Kelly and Tony Eason drafted at 14 and 15 respectively. On top of the erroneous rumors, a subpar season at Pittsburgh had NFL teams looking more at what was wrong with Marino rather than what was right.
I threw more interceptions than I did touchdowns, and that was because a couple games that I, threw a lot of interceptions in games. One was Penn State. I think I threw 5. And, after you throw 3, what's the difference?
When Marino's hometown Steelers were up at 21, there was hope that Pittsburgh would take the player they had been so enamored with ever since he was the starter at Central Catholic High School. Alas, Chuck Noll decided to continue rebuilding his defense instead. As the first round dwindled to the final 5 selections, the Jets were on the clock at pick 24, needing a quarterback. New York opted for the little-known talent out of UC Davis, Ken O'Brien. With 2 picks left in the first round, Don Shula and the Dolphins took their chances on the pick QB.
The Dolphins select quarterback Dan Marino of Pittsburgh.
Ironically enough, Marino's draft day slide to Shula and the Dolphins couldn't have put him in a better situation, as he became one of the most prolific passers in NFL history.
Marino throws for a touchdown, and there's the record. Breaks the all-time NFL record.
Number 32 overall, the San Diego Chargers have selected quarterback from Purdue, Drew Brees.
At 6 feet tall, draft experts considered Drew Brees too short. They thought he lacked arm strength, too. While the majority failed to see the potential of the undersized Brees coming out of college, he never doubted his abilities at the next level. The Chargers took the future Hall of Famer in the second round of the 2001 draft.
Drops back, looks to the far sideline, wide open, Traquan Smith. And Traquan Smith is going to go to the end zone. Drew Brees has done it. You have just witnessed history in New Orleans. Drew Brees is the NFL's all-time leading passer.
Welcome to the 2005 National Football League College Draft.
Well, is it Alex Smith? Well, is it Aaron Rodgers, quarterback?
Round 1 of the 2005 draft was intense, as expected. Coming into the night, headliners Aaron Rodgers and Alex Smith were projected as top picks, but only one could go number 1 overall to the San Francisco 49ers.
San Francisco 49ers select Alex Smith, quarterback, Utah.
We felt that Aaron was probably ready to play sooner than Alex was. But in the end, we were kind of saying with our developing team, we felt a little bit that Alex may be the little better in the long run.
Could it have been anyone else but Aaron Rodgers to end up as our number 1 draft slide of all time? On that fateful night, the Cal prospect sat in the green room for roughly 4.5 hours.
You kind of joke with the guys in the green room on the bus over, like, hey, who's going to be the last one in there? We all thought we were going top 10. Well, it's not that funny when it's you.
Spurned by his hometown 49ers, Rodgers began the free fall of all free falls that evening.
A lot of people did not have Aaron Rodgers as a top 10 quarterback. He has flaws. He has blemishes.
While the throwing mechanics issue provided the main reasoning for Rodgers' slide, another logistical reason was in play.
First-round contracts at that time were not what they are today. They were onerous. And first-round quarterback contracts were even more onerous.
Teams either didn't need a quarterback, didn't have cap space for a quarterback, or had head coaches whose jobs were on the line and probably didn't want a rookie quarterback.
Playing in a so-called QB-friendly system under Jeff Tedford caused draft experts to think Rodgers' abilities wouldn't immediately translate to the next level. and that naturally drew comparisons to Tedford's other college prodigies, Trent Dilfer, Achilles Smith, and Joey Harrington, among others.
With the 24th selection in the 2005 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Aaron Rodgers, quarterback from California.
Some things are definitely worth waiting for, and Aaron Rodgers, quarterback out of Cal, had to wait almost 5 hours. What was this day like for you?
Well, it wasn't the easiest day, but yeah, it was a long day. Not a lot of things went the way we thought they'd go, but I'm just so excited about being able to go to a team that wants me and a team that I can learn from the greatest quarterback of our day right now. And I'm just excited to get out of that green room, and I couldn't be happy with the team that picked me and what next year and the years to come is going to look like being a Packer.
Nearly 20 years later, Rodgers has shown that all that negative noise surrounding him pre-draft was just smoke and mirrors.